My name is John Dowles, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly for us in the room and those listening online. As we continue to meet in person, all committee members are required to be physically present here in MetroPlan Orlando boardroom for purposes of achieving a quorum. We were very glad when people walked in here at the last moment. Staff will continue to stream our meetings online for public access. Now we'd like to start this morning first with a invocation led by Commissioner Ramos and our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Davitt. Please stand. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. This morning, I asked that everyone silence your phones, smart devices, etc. I do ask all committee members wait to be recognized to speak and to activate your microphones before speaking and turning them back off when you're complete. There are two public comment points in the meeting. The first is for action items, and the second is for comments of general nature. You may provide your public comments in person, virtually over Zoom, or in advance by email or phone message. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact MetroPlan Orlando. And with that, for agenda review, Ms. Larson.
Good morning, committee members and chair. This morning, we have a minor change in staffing. Mr. Siaosai Fine of Florida's Turnpike Enterprise is currently at the Florida APA conference. So James Brown is attending virtually on behalf of the Turnpike Enterprise. He says that there is no update, but if any of you have any questions during that time, Mr. Brown is happy to answer those for you. Also, go to the next slide, Lisa. The Sunrail had its northern expansion. The DeLand station opened on August 12th, 2024, with great success. And so now you can take the Sunrail up to DeLand. And there also is a circulator going to the downtown DeLand. So you can take the train up and then peruse all those great shops in DeLand. Also, upcoming is the Bike 5, 5 miles, 5 parks, 5 cities, with Bike Walk Central Florida on Saturday, October 26th. So the link to that to register is there. And I believe some of you are involved in that. And then also upcoming is FDOT's Mobility Week. That's at the end of October, early November. And so there will be a series of events surrounding that. One of them, which we are affiliated, is the Blind Experience, which will be on October 30th at, I believe, the downtown OPD site. Stay tuned for more information on that. And then one final note is our staff, one of our members of staff, Laura Bauk, has been promoted to Manager of Project Development. So congrats to Laura. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mike Wilson.
Quick question on the DeLand Sunrail. What time does the last, and my Sunrail app's not loading, what's the last departure on weekdays and weekends for DeLand?
I don't know off the top of my head, no. But I can.
My app will eventually connect, I'm sure it's on there.
Yeah. No, I don't know off the top of my head.
Take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. First week in August was Stop on Red Week, and so we're sort of making that our safety moment for the month of August. And so as I was putting this together, a story came to mind. was talking to someone at an employee at a bike shop, and he said that when he would stop at a traffic signal on his bike, when the light shifted from red to green, he would typically count to 5. Right. And he was actually at this intersection here, which is Orange Avenue at Colonial, facing into the heart of downtown, looking south. And so it did exactly that. And you notice how this building on the left side there is creating a sightline issue. And so the light turned green, he started counting. The car in the adjacent lane pulled into the intersection, and on the count of 3 got T-boned right in front of him. So that story really stuck with me, obviously. So indicative of the data that we have about 170 fatal or serious crashes per year that involve red light running. About 20 of those are fatalities. And notice that nearly half involve teen and 20-something drivers, and also nearly half involve distracted driving as an added factor. So those point to a couple of other avenues of outreach and enforcement to improve, cut down on red light crashes. There's a couple different avenues that we want to take as far as the countermeasures. There's the engineering side of things, improving signal timing so that we have less frustration along corridors, so people are less likely to run signals. There's the red light indicator lights. You're probably familiar with the blue lights that sit on top of the traffic signals that help law enforcement do enforcement in a more efficient manner. There's automated enforcement, of course, of red light cameras. And the other option is to just replace the signal with a roundabout. So if we've got the space and the right conditions to make that work, roundabouts greatly reduce serious injury crashes. You might get a few sideswipe crashes, but you don't get those high-speed angle crashes. And then on the behavioral side of things, noting those younger drivers being more prone, making that a focus of new driver training. Again, distraction enforcement. And then just for all of us, defensive driving, like those 5 seconds, whether we're driving or walking, is the other approach. And so getting people in that mindset of just don't assume just because that light turned green that it's safe to enter the intersection. So that concludes my safety moment for this morning. Thank you.
And I have an answer for the DeLand Sunrail question. So the first train leaves at 5:15 in the morning. Sorry, you sent me those and I'm trying to read them. 5:15 in the morning. And then the last train to leave DeLand station is at 7:55. And then the last train to arrive in DeLand is at 11:30 in the evening.
On Saturdays as well?
No, weekdays only. I know. One day, maybe.
I think we have a roll call now.
Yes. I'll ask all committee members to keep your microphones muted until call. Please stay here or present. David,
Present.
Sullivan for DeCiccio,
Present.
Dallas,
Present.
Foraker, Gardner.
Sorry, the microphone delayed.
Mhm. Gardner, Guthrie, Henson,
Here.
Kennedy, McCann,
Present.
Ramos,
Present.
Sackett,
Here.
Slated,
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum physically present, and we have a request for excused absence from Commissioner Kennedy from the city of Ocoee.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Mayor Henson, second. I'm not sure who said second. Oh, Commissioner second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. Right, anything else or? Great. All right, we will now hear public comments on action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold public comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment or are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact MetroPlan Orlando. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
Thank you so much. Do we have any members in the public attending in person that wish to make a comment?
I have not received any
right.
requests.
Great. Are there any written comments?
No, there are not.
Voices all over come directing us. This is great. Okay. Next we'll hear from agency partners. And first we have from FDOT, Ms. Beckman. Welcome.
Good morning. We move up there and now I have to come back here for the first time, so please forgive me. I'm going to keep things somewhat brief this morning. I do want to give you a few quick announcements before I get into what's on the screen. First off, I want to draw your attention to that there is lane closures on Sand Lake Road at I-4 coming up. We've had some going on for some time, but next Monday and Tuesday, the 9th and 10th, there will be overnight closures from 11 p.m. We have to get some cranes to put some very large 72, 75 ton beams into place for the overpass. So there will be a closure on September 9th and 10th overnight at Sand Lake Road. Additionally, we've been talking about our Florida transportation plan. It's our long range transportation plan for the state. Goes through 2055. I spoke to you, I think, in July about it, that there are focus groups that you can become a part of: safety, resiliency, economic development. We had that first round. The next round is coming up. I will send those dates to Ms. Larson in an email so that she can forward those to you if you'd like to attend those. Additionally, we are going to have an open house. It's coming up on September 19th. It's actually, I'm sorry, not an open house, but a regional workshop. It's going to be in Winter Park from 9:30 to 11:30 on September 19th at the community center. It will be in that information as well. And there's also going to be a virtual open house that will be taking place, and all that information will be in that email. Next, the I-4 Corridors Programming Office has set up shop down in Celebration on October 3rd from 5 to 7 in the evening. They're having an open house, so you can come meet the team, talk about the projects and whatnot. So that will be taking place in Celebration. I will also include that in that email so you have the information on that. So finally, long awaited, I have some good news. We have District 5 has won 2 of the American Transportation Awards. So these are presented by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. It's a prestigious award, and it looks at projects that impact communities, improve connectivity, and mobility for bicyclists, pedestrians, efficiency, and whatnot. FDOT is a part of the Southeastern region, or otherwise known as SASHTO, and there are 8 states in that Southeastern region. There were 25 total nominations from those 8 states for the awards, and we are proud to announce that out of the 10 winning projects among all 8 states, 2 were here in Florida, and both of which were in District 5, and both of which are both within the MetroPlan Orlando area. So without further ado, we have the Wekiva Parkway Section 7A, which won for the quality of life and community development category. This is a category that is described as innovative projects that provide a better solution, to connect communities to businesses, jobs, healthcare facilities, recreational activities, while encouraging a mix of transportation modes. Priority is given to projects that enhance and support transit and non-motorized transportation. Nominees had to demonstrate community involvement and interaction and illustrate public benefit for customers or users. So Section 7A on the Wekiva Parkway transformed 3.5 miles of the corridor into an elevated expressway with parallel non-tolled local frontage roads for local traffic. Section 7A enhanced safety for both wildlife and people. The river basin in that area is home to 25 different springs, as well as threatened species such as the black bear. Long distance and higher speed traffic are put onto the elevated expressway and are separated from that wildlife as well as local traffic on those frontage roads. Roundabouts, which Mr. Wilson referenced earlier as being a nice addition to safety, are eliminating the left-hand turn collisions. So that is also helping for our motorists. Approximately 24,000 vehicles a day use this section, as well as we do have new trails that help support by both bicyclists and pedestrians. Next, the second project was the Orange Blossom Trail pedestrian safety improvements. It won in the category of small project safety. It is described as projects which were completed to address safety concerns and issues and were successful in doing so. Through the use of proven countermeasures, projects in this category serve as success stories for other transportation agencies looking to try something new or innovative to drive down crashes. Projects in the category should consider all road users, including those vulnerable users. As you're aware, OBT from Holden Avenue to 34th Street between the period of 2014 and 2019 saw 70 pedestrian bicycle involved crashes with 57 injuries and 13 fatalities in that 5-year period. The area was deemed as one of the deadliest corridors for people walking and biking within Central Florida. So FDOT made it its mission to end crashes in the area. And over time, the department continued to add more and more safety features. And while crashes reduced in time, the department continued its efforts. And now we have a total of 6 pedestrian hybrid beacons, raised crosswalks, in-road lighting, as well as the median pedestrian fencing to help prevent crossings by pedestrians where it's not intended, where crosswalks don't exist. We're happy to report there have been no fatalities or serious injuries within this section. That being said, that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer you. Thank you so much.
Any questions from Ms. Beckman? I want to say thank you very much for your help with us in Edgewood with the box on the road. Don't block the intersection. It's working so far.
It is perfect. I'm so glad to hear. I'll report back. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have for links, we have Ms. Whitten.
Hi, good morning. My updates are brief today. Our highest ridership day continues to be May 3rd at just over 64,000. Our average ridership is around 60,000 right now. So that's about an 80% recovery from pre-COVID levels. And we also did our last August service changes were implemented on August 25th. And there's a news media alert in your agenda packet. So I won't go through each and every one of them. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Right. Any questions for Ms. Holden? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Brown for Turnpike, but you said there was no report. Just want to give an opportunity just in case. Okay, very good. We'll move on now to action items. We have 4 action items today. Our first action is approve the MAC minutes from June 27th. Are there any corrections to it? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion, Mayor Hendricks, second.
Sure, I'll second.
Mayor Foraker. All right, sorry.
Yeah. But he's not reading.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion, a second. Do we, all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. And now we're going to move to Jason Sartorio regarding the Transportation Improvement Program. Welcome, Jason.
Morning, Chairman and committee members. This morning I have 4 tip amendments for you. Additional information regarding these amendments, look in tab 2 of your agendas. The first amendment will increase local funds in fiscal year 2025 for construction of the Central Castleberry connectivity improvements from Hibiscus Road to Marigold Road. And the next 3 amendments are all new projects supporting links with transit enhancements. All 3 projects receive congressional earmarks for funding for capital in fiscal year 2025. And the projects include bus shelter and solar technology, Central Station bus terminal retrofitting, and bus pullouts and safety enhancements. As I mentioned earlier, you have some additional information on these amendments located in tab 2 of your agendas. That being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? Motion approved.
So moved.
So move Mayor Hitson and Mayor McCann. Would you like to second it?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. And you're still back up with us.
Yep.
Feel the love this-
All right.
Sure. Hop right in.
We're
So-
practicing a little obsequiousness this morning, I think, now.
Next, we have our annual roll forward amendment. This includes projects that had funds that were originally programmed in last year's TIP for fiscal year 2024. And at the end of last year's fiscal year, these funds were not committed by June 30th. So they automatically roll forward into fiscal year 2025 in FDOT's new 5-year work program, which came out in July. And on our end, we need to amend our TIP for consistency purposes so that we match FDOT's 5-year work program. And as many of you know, this is a routine procedure that we go through about this time every year. The information regarding this amendment is looking in tab 3 of your agendas. That being said, unless there are any questions, we're asking for your recommendation of approval.
Are there any questions? Mayor Sladek, moves to approve. Do we have a second? We have a second for Commissioner Sackett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted.
Thank you.
Right. All right. Next up, we have Regional Vision Zero Action Plan. Mr. Wilson, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. So we are closing in on the adoption of our Regional Vision Zero Action Plan. Just wanted to give you an update on the changes that we made based on the feedback from your staff, from our other committees, from the general public of the draft plan that we put out a couple of months ago. So we had, of course, sending the plans out to everybody on the committees via email, but also through our website, so the public had a chance to review it as well. Social media, et cetera, all the myriad ways in which we can reach out. We also had a special meeting for the Vision Zero Task Force. They get their feedback, especially important since they were so integral to the process. We had some surveying done as part of that process, and so asking questions about the plan itself, and generally people were supportive of the plan and how it was put together, and felt that it would be effective. And then also feedback on how people felt about their participation in the development of the plan, and so got high marks on that as well. The types of feedback that we received, the things that you would expect, things having to do with terminology, spelling, wording suggestions, but also getting into things like some refinements of some of the action items for clarity, improvements of the presentations, and some of the graphics for readability in the report. There's some questions about some of the specific actions in the text, so we expanded on those. And in some of the particular corridors and projects that we identified, some people wanted some more detail in that. And so when it came down to the substantive changes, we added a what's next section in the executive summary, so people have an idea of where do we go from here after this plan is adopted. We made a change in the top 30 corridors and intersections listing to make sure that people knew who was responsible for that corridor rather than just the location of it. We did an update of our public engagement stats and brought in some more detail on the road safety audits that we've identified for particularly our tier 1 and tier 2 corridors, those high priority corridors that haven't had any analysis yet, but also more detail about the before and after efforts that we're doing on current projects that are already programmed or within progress right now for implementation. And then we have our resolution, of course, to support this whole effort. It establishes our Vision Zero goal of reaching 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. And points out that it is an integral part of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. All these all this data and information is feeding and informing that MTP. It establishes that we're continuing on with our Vision Zero task force, and we're looking at how that task force will be comprised and how it will function going forward. It commits to annual monitoring of the plan. Obviously, we want to see how we're doing, both from a crash standpoint and from an implementation of our actions. Continuing that focus on transportation underserved communities, because they're so disproportionately impacted by traffic crashes. And the key thing is reframing our entire approach to how we talk about traffic crashes, that they are preventable incidents, and that we need to see them that way and not as a cost of doing business, if you will, as the cost of mobility. And then finally, acknowledging that we are a partner with all of you, the local governments, that all of you have your own plans. And so there'll be an ongoing effort to make sure that we have collaboration going forward to help all of you implement your plans and vice versa. So with that, we are asking for your action this morning to adopt the Vision Zero resolution, which then adopts the plan.
All right, do we have motion to recommend approval for the draft?
So moved.
Got that. We got three motions. Do we have a second? Second, Mayor Henson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted.
Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago on State Road 434, my daughter's big SUV was rear-ended by a motorcycle going 85 to 100 miles an hour.
Mm.
The vehicle was destroyed. He lived. I don't know how he ever lived, but motorcyclists don't need insurance if they're wearing a helmet in the state of Florida. That's what she's been told by the attorneys. That's crazy. This guy was weaving down 434. How do you get rid of those? We need a massive campaign to say motorcycles. I know there's the one, watch out for the motorcycle behind you, that sort of thing, but that was the weirdest, scariest accident I've seen.
Well,
Right in front of my house.
Yeah, that was news to me. I mean, yeah, motorcycles not needing insurance.
Why?
Huh.
1990, I guess it's been.
Wow.
I have insurance on mine, but.
So she's being sued.
Interesting.
Oh, and they're suing her.
Hmm?
He hit her? Yeah.
He hit her. She's 60% responsible for being in his way.
What?
Yep, he's 40%.
That's
She
insane.
just texted me. She was served with a ticket this morning.
That's
What a
insane.
mess. It's just, how do you,
Yeah,
I
I
see
think-
that all the time.
Mhm.
I-4 where the motorcycles are weaving.
Mhm.
How do
I
you
think that's
stop?
a
How do you-
legislative request, because that sounds crazy.
Mhm.
It sounds crazy.
I mean,
So Mike will take care of it because he's in charge of safety.
But that does speak to one of the things that we want to do as an MPO, working with our peers around the state, is identifying things that need to be addressed at the state level.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yes, that's part of the continuing work.
Thanks.
How do you think our legislature would look to a request that helmets be required?
they went through that already.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go there again.
That's what I expected.
Yeah.
If they're wearing it. How about it?
All right, well, we can bring that up at another
Mhm.
time for legislative. All right, any other questions for Ms. Wilson? All right, thank you very much. Let's see. All right, we now have two informational presentations today. Please hold questions until the presentation ends if possible. I believe we have Dr. Strickhauser. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's very hard not to keep talking about that because as Mike, as you were talking, I recalled from our 2021 version of this that we had a major finding about the fact that young males are our riskiest respondents when it comes to risky behavior in driving. So definitely confirmation there. Yes, I'm Dr. Strickhauser with Summit Survey Research. I'm here to talk to you about high-level results of the 2024 Regional Transportation Survey. So this is our public opinion research done every few years for Metro Plan Orlando. The full report will be available on the research page after committee and board members. So these are, our high-level takeaways for the 10 minutes we have this morning. So a little bit about the methodology before we get into the findings. So the research surveyed 3,134 residents of Orange, Osceola, Seminole County. The survey was open for 2 months in the spring and was offered in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole in a way that respondents could toggle back and forth. So they might have selected English at first and could toggle to Haitian Creole in the middle of the survey if they so desired. We disseminated the survey using 3 methods to gather a diverse set of residents. So we partnered with industry leaders. It's a company called Qualtrics. I have high faith in them. Lots of large companies use them for panel surveying. We strategically offered the survey link through avenues across the community, working with a marketing expert to ensure all corners of the Central Florida community were reached. And then we also partnered with the Institute for Social and Behavioral Sciences at UCF to do intercept surveys. And intercept surveys are those where a nice researcher is standing outside of a public location and asking people if they'd be interested in sharing their opinion, which many people were. So to ensure that we are reflective of the 3-county area, we use census data. We look at the most recent census demographics that we know are important to the public opinion when it comes to transportation. So there are lots of demographics that make all of us up, but there are key demographics that we know impact the opinion you might have about transportation. So those are things like age, race, ethnicity, employment status, income level, just to name a few. And so you can see here the reflectiveness of the area we serve. And just a quick note for this research, but also for future research that you might see, particularly when it comes to population research like this public opinion. The OMB just came out with new federal race and/or ethnicity categories, and these are standards that they are encouraging all of the United States, but particularly government entities to use, and are actually going to require this in the next 5 years. So Metro Plan Orlando has gotten a head start on this. And so these are our new race and/or ethnicity categories coming from the federal government. So key takeaways, that the differences, you now are encouraged to select all that apply instead of one category. And there's an addition of the Middle Eastern or North African category. It's new, federally speaking. And what that does is it pulls them out of where they often were selecting, which was white. So it makes this group much more visible. Yeah. This is the survey. Yes, this is the survey. Thank you. And it will match, like if we were to look, yes. It is, and it's part of which I won't use our time today, but it's part of the change in being able to select multiple categories. And so that group gets a little inflated because now I can select white and Asian, white and Black, in a different way than I was able to before as a respondent. That's a good call out, though. You know your stats. Okay, so we'll go through a couple topics today, but transportation safety really rose to the top for our respondents. So just a call out here, when we asked if planners should prioritize pedestrian-friendly communities, almost all 3,000 of our respondents say yes. I want to live in an area that I feel is pedestrian-friendly. 32% of our respondents, so it's 1 in 3, don't feel they live in a pedestrian-friendly community. So you could see that as a win. That means 2 out of 3, tend to feel comfortable walking around, feel safe, but it does leave room for improvement. And you can kind of do the quantification of, 1 in 3 for our respondents. Well, that's 1,000 people. And of course, extrapolated out to our larger population is, we want to get that down to 0. So talking about our risky driver behavior to Mike's points, we do ask people, do they know that speed and safety are related? So people do know that speed and safety are related. So most people say, sure, I get that. Then we ask, well, how fast do you typically drive? And we give them all kinds of options. I drive the speed limit, 5 miles per hour over. So our key takeaways here are that 1 in 3 say they drive at least 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Another 12%, so in addition to 1 in 3, say I drive even faster. So people admit to, I drive a little faster than the speed limit, and 1 in 4 say, I think it's okay to speed when the roads are clear. 1 in 10 say, I feel like it's okay to text and drive. And those are just the people that are admitting to that. So we can imagine that's, maybe a little bit higher. So that's concerning. I would say something to pay attention to. But even more concerning is when we look at those, what we would call risky drivers who are admitting to like, yeah, I speed when the roads are clear. They are, the speeders. So those who admit to speeding say, twice as often, it's okay to speed when the roads are clear. So I'm already going faster, 20 miles per hour of the speed limit. I'm admitting to that. And, I tend to take more risk. So definitely a concerning mix of speed and risky behavior. So we know new technologies are more present in our daily transportation experiences through driverless technology, both personal and commercial. So it's important for Metro Plan Orlando and this group to understand the level of comfort and concern Central Florida residents have about these growing technologies. We did ask this in 2021. So generally speaking, people know more about driverless technology, which kind of, makes sense. But they also have more concerns, and they specifically have concerns when we ask around safety of driverless vehicles. So increased knowledge, but also increased concern. About 75%, so most people have not ridden in a driverless car. And we asked that group, okay, you haven't ridden in one, are you interested in? And if you are, why or why not? So for those that say, yeah, I'd be interested in doing that, but never have, these are the reasons for wanting to drive in a driverless car. I just want to be able to talk about the technology. I wouldn't have to be scared of a stranger driving a car. So that's sort of getting at the ride share concerns, particularly for women, and just to see how well it works. So like I said, there is interest and increased knowledge, but certainly some hesitation. And then for the other half, so really it's like a 50-50 split who are like, I'm not interested. And here's why I'm not interested. Driverless car can't defend against lunatic drivers. I don't want drivers to lose their jobs. Traffic problems are not due to insufficient roads, are due, to insufficient roads, not whether cars are driverless. So, the opinions are all over the board, much more in the report, but just some high level takeaways there of people's thoughts on driverless technology. To help planners remove barriers, it's useful to understand how people define for themselves and their families a transportation system that they consider equitable, where access is equal no matter your circumstances. So we asked, how do you define equity in transportation to our respondents? And many respondents have strong feelings about increasing access for all residents, regardless of personal characteristics. And so this word cloud is a way just to count, the frequency of words said in an open-ended response, but it's an easy way to see some of the priorities for transportation equity. And calling out that we asked this question in 2021, and Metro Plan Orlando has developed a working definition for equity in transportation. So this year's results will help solidify and confirm that definition of equity in transportation is really reflecting respondents and residents' views on the topic. So turning to concerns and challenges for pedestrians and cyclists for our Lynx and Sunrail riders, pedestrians and cyclists actually have the top two same concerns. So uncertain weather conditions, and they don't feel safe because of unsafe driver behavior. That's for both pedestrians and cyclists, those that may often or sometimes use walking or cycling as a form of transportation. Then specifically for pedestrians, the third most common response was there just weren't sidewalks where they needed them. And then for cyclists, there just weren't enough bicycle facilities, was their third most common challenge cited. And then for Lynx and Sunrail, the bus or train does not run frequently enough, or the departure times and arrival times are inconvenient for respondents. There are no bus or train stops where I need them. Bus rides are too long, and the train doesn't take me where I need to go. Although this was a survey before the DeLand opening, so that that may have shifted a little bit, at least for those West Volusia County residents. So we know transportation is a social determinant of health. If you've heard of that, it's really just all the things that happen outside of the doctor's office that impact our health, and transportation is one of those things. So reliable transportation is critical for maintaining adequate access to all healthcare services. So this survey found that 25% of respondents skipped or missed a doctor's appointment in the past year because they did not have reliable transportation. So specifically citing transportation as the barrier to accessing a healthcare appointment. And of note, this is 7 points higher than it was in 2021. So just something to think about, maybe why that shift is happening. The number is a little bit different if we break out by different groups. So we look at, we have minorities that have a much higher than 25% rate, particularly our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander respondents. That rate for that particular group sits at 42%, so much higher. Our transit riders are missing appointments at higher frequency, about 3 times higher, around 36% versus non-transit riders. And the county differences, excuse me. So the Osceola residents are missing appointments at a rate of around 40% versus Orange and Osceola, although the rate for all counties is higher than it was in 2021. And many Central Floridians already use public transportation because, we ask them and we see that there is definitely interest in use and excitement about use. But like we just saw, the desire for more stops, faster service, and service on nights and weekends. We added a question this year. Would you consider taking a bus or train if parking fees were significantly increased? I have on here 34%, but really it's this like third split. So a third say, yeah, I'd consider taking the bus or train if it was really like a lot more expensive, to park. A third say, nah, it's not going to make a difference. And a third say, I don't know. So we might look into that a little bit more to get cars off the road and people into transit modes. So a quick thank you to all of the community partners, some of whom are here today. Thank you so much for disseminating the survey. When asked, that includes 34 local governments, 14 transportation planning organizations, 15 chambers, and 32 community nonprofit and health organizations. So like I said, this will be available in full, about a 25-page, beautiful, exciting, really interesting results available on the research page for Metro Plan Orlando after the board and committee meetings and next week. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? The survey that y'all took, was this primarily in person, live, SMS, online? How did y'all?
Yes, good question. So we have, let's see. I don't have it in here, but we'll go back to the first. So we had, I do have it there. So we had the panel, the public survey, and the intercept survey, and then results are aggregated. So the online panel is through the company, the public surveys through our community partners, and then the intercept survey, which I just love so much for a lot of reasons. But these are UCF researchers, and they are out at tax collectors and the clerk of the court, libraries. So these it's just a great way to connect with the community around this topic. So yes.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. I think we next have the readiness study. Mr. Hill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This is an update of our EV readiness study. It's been about a quarter since I gave you the last update, but just to refresh your memory, we're doing this because it aligns with environmental and climate change goals in our 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It also supports sustainability in our region, and it helps us coordinate amongst the municipalities within our region and how we will develop electric vehicle supply and equipment to support future operators of EVs. This work is being done with Kittleson's, and Ihong Su is one of the project managers, and I believe she's in the room. And Kittleson is working with EcoPreserve to help us complete this work. Next slide. So this morning, I'm going to speak about 2 of the tasks in this study. There are 5, but we are at the end or halfway through the work, and the work that we completed mostly has been under task 1 and task 2. Next slide. And under task 1, we're doing an assessment, or we completed an assessment on electric vehicles. How we have looked at this readiness study in a planning context as well as a regional context. We are looking at infrastructure and ownership in the region, EV policies, and then a forecast on how electric vehicles will start to create more demand for supply and equipment. Next slide. So again, there's EVs, and then there's EV supply and equipment that supports it. And what we're looking at in this study is passenger vehicles, not heavy vehicles, and not micro mobility vehicles, although they can benefit from this infrastructure development. And so this is just showing you the different types of charging that occurs and that is available now. I'm sure in the future that with technology improvements, there'll be other ways to charge vehicles. And some other countries are already starting to experiment with alternatives. But this just shows level 1 is where you can pretty much charge your vehicle at home. But you only get, and again, range anxiety is one of the hurdles that we have to overcome with this technology. But you see that you only get like 2 to 5 miles of range per hour charge. And again, you can do this at your home if you live in an apartment complex or in a condo. And level 2 is where you actually put in the charging equipment on your property, your home, perhaps, and you see that you get a more range per hour in terms of the charge. And this can be done at home, apartments, workplace, as fleet operations, and in public. Then lastly, direct current fast charging. This is where you get the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, and your range is much higher. And this is typically done in fleets, in the public, at gas stations / EV charging stations, and can be done in apartments. As charging equipment develops, different charging connectors have emerged from different vehicle manufacturers due to the regulatory standards as well as proprietary technologies. This results in needing multiple connectors at charging stations. Many of the largest car makers have pledged to convert to Tesla supercharging standards because Tesla is pretty much the elephant in the room when it comes to this technology. And so as more automakers develop these types of vehicles, we'll have to start to develop that supply and equipment infrastructure to support it. Next slide. So in the planning context, FDOT and local agencies have already started to do some preliminary work in developing and adopting their communities or their area to support EVs. FDOT is the recipient of the NEVI grant, and this is funding that has been made available through the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. FDOT is focusing on providing direct charge fast charging along regional roadways with a maximum of 50 miles between charging stations, providing resources for local governments to develop and implement their own plans. And so FDOT has completed an EV roadmap, and that was a survey of ownership within the state. They developed a master plan, and that defined how they would meet that demand, how they would start to deploy these charging facilities, which is their deployment plan. So that is what the state is doing at the local level. Osceola County has done a EV charging master plan, and they are preparing a grant application to the charging fuel infrastructure grant that's available to deploy charging facilities around the county. City of Orlando has an electric mobility roadmap, and it defines the principles that the city will use to develop their own infrastructure. And the Orange County Mobility Hub strategy is looking at areas around the county where they can have these mobility hubs to collate multiple modes of transportation, and EVs will be part of that. Next slide. This graphic pretty much mirrors one of the previous graphics that I showed you, where you have the different levels of charging and how they are being applied. We're looking at here, in terms of the regional contact, we're looking at land uses and travel patterns to understand the trip types and match land uses with the appropriate charging infrastructure. Next slide. Equity is part of the IIJA. Federal government is encouraging and requiring that funds that are used, that 40% of the benefits go to disadvantaged, underserved, minority, Black, brown, low income. I mean, the title changes quite a bit, but the benefits should impact these communities. And they provided a tool, the Climate and Environment and Economic Justice Screening Tool, to help transportation agencies to assess where these communities are and how to match the benefits from the funds that we're using. Now, interesting thing about this map is it shows those impacted areas, but this ties to a slide later where we show ownership, and then we show where the charging facilities are. But interesting thing, approximately 37% of the level 2 charging stations are in these communities, and 45% of the direct charge fast charging stations are in these communities, and these communities only represent 35% of the population and region. Now, there's several answers, but the first two are, these are based on census tracts, and these are large census tracts, and they are located along major or regional roadways. So when I show you the slide later, you'll see where along those regional roadways, major arterials is where you have many charging facilities, and many of those impact or in those census tracts that are minority, disadvantaged, underserved, Black, brown, low-income communities. Next slide. So ownership. EVs are pretty much a choice that affluent communities can make. The previous communities that I described haven't gotten to a point where they are affordable for other communities and for the increased use of or purchase of electric vehicles. Affordability is one of those challenges. But in our region, we have seen an increase in ownership, although it's still a small share of the types of vehicles that are owned. There has been an increase. Certainly some of the incentives that the federal government has provided has helped. And then there's been an increase in the availability of electric vehicles. So there has been an upswing. When I've given this presentation to the other committees, and since I was in the room, I did a just quick poll on how many people own an electric vehicle. And interestingly, it's a small percentage at this point. Next slide. Now this, again, goes back to that previous slide I was speaking about, where you have charging facilities in the low-income, disadvantaged, minority communities. And again, you can see, we can show this, but it gets very busy by layering it on the previous slide. But again, you can see where many of these charging facilities are along major roadways in our region. Next slide. I mentioned one of the reasons why we're doing this study is so that there's a comprehensive development of EV charging facilities within our region. Because as it stands now, each of the jurisdictions can pretty much develop their own policies on how they want to roll out these services. However, the state has already preempted those efforts, and they've developed some legislation that will, and I believe it's a good approach, develop some standardization on how local jurisdictions will invite development of these charging facilities, how these facilities will operate, in so that there's consistency across the region. So, we have a saying that, people who drive cars, they don't care, if you go from the city of Orlando into Orange County on a particular roadway. They just want to make sure it's consistent and everything is the same. So we want to also have that type of structure set up. Next slide. So task 2, one of the things when we developed this scope, we wanted to have topic specific workshops. And so we've developed 4, one for utilities, to have a policy discussion, to talk about siting and then investment. Next slide. And so we've completed the utility workshop on June 20th. We had a participation from OUC, Kissimmee Utility Authority, Florida Power, and Duke Energy. And we had a pretty good discussion. We did some polling to get some information from each of these representatives. But we came away with some key findings, and that is the need to have consistent permitting across county lines. And that speaks to that legislation that is being developed. There's a lack of access to qualified technicians. And this is not just in our area. I think this is universal, where you can have a charge point is one of the big supply equipment operators in our region. But they can qualify their technicians on how they service these facilities. Then another company will have their own way of doing it, and on and on. And so there needs to be some comprehensive approach here. Because one of the other challenges about charging facilities that I've read about and heard about is, and this goes back to that, you just want to make sure the road operates the same, that you go to a charging facility, and let's say you don't own a Tesla, but you get there and the charger won't work, it's broken. And so you're kind of like stuck. But how do you create that consistency across our region and across the nation? There's a lack of control over the networks. The utilities would like to understand and know that these charging facilities are operating, that they're getting a return on their investment, and to see data. They want to have access to data because these are private companies and they don't necessarily have to give you information on how their charging facilities are operating. However, the utilities can tell about how these are if they're operating at all. I'm sure they can see that, but they want to see more than just that. They want to have some more information and have access to that data. And then this last one, we had some discussion on a regional application. I mentioned that Osceola County is putting together a application to the charging fueling infrastructure grant, and there was a suggestion that Metro Plan Orlando put an application together as well. Well, when we scoped this project, we wanted any effort to submit grants to be at the back end, so that we knew where we had a better understanding of our region, we had a better understanding of the needs, and thus what to ask for. And in the discussion, my position was, well, what do we ask for? And couldn't really come up with anything at this time. There were a couple suggestions, but they didn't appear to be very strong. And my position was, when we complete this study, we will know for sure what we're asking for, and we'll have the backup to support the application. I would prefer to take that approach because my understanding or hope is that the funding will continue, rather than put together a application in haste and not really be clear on what we're asking for. Next slide. So I mentioned we've already done the utilities workshop. Here are the workshops that we are anticipating having certainly over the next quarter. The dates to be determined, but the first one will be on a policy discussion, talking about identifying sites, and then the whole look at grant opportunities and funding strategies. They'll be open to this committee and the other committees. And as soon as we get the dates nailed down, we will send out information inviting you to participate. Next slide. So next steps are continuing workshops, finalizing the charging infrastructure analysis, looking at a public outreach plan and website materials, and then that whole notion of, not only going after funds, but we want, what we complete, we want it to be a continuation, and we want to be able to continue to monitor, how this particular technology and mode, how it is changing. I showed some information on how the ownership is increasing in the region. With that ownership, we have to have the infrastructure to support it. So we want to be able to monitor that information. And again, hopefully it will lead us into some other funding opportunities. Next slide. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, and I can respond to any questions or comments.
Marty.
Thank you, John. I just want to share a couple things we have done in the city of Winter Park. We have about 25 public charging stations that are currently free, but we have just decided to start charging after doing a comprehensive study of the usage. People would park in them all day, for example. So we're going to be rolling out a charging system where previously it had been free because they're quite popular. Second item I want to mention is that our police department is making a transition to EVs. They have a few out now, and they are quite pleased with how it serves the city. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond? Can I respond
Sure.
real quick? And Lisa, can you go back to the slide that shows the workshops? Thank you. So, Ms. Mayor, so again, we invite you to participate in these workshops, or your staff to participate. And happy to hear that there is a demand for these vehicles in your community, and that your local law enforcement, and I would imagine your fire and rescue departments are being educated and informed on this technology, because responding to a crash involving an electric vehicle is different than responding to a crash with a gas-powered vehicle. And I just wanted to ask a question: what type of vehicles will your law enforcement agencies have?
Teslas, and exactly what model, I think it's the Tesla Y, but I'm not certain about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Henson.
Well, one of the things I've always harped on is how are we going to start? These are going to be more popular as time goes on. How are we going to fund our road?
Exactly.
Our roads, and I just we've got a few of them in our city, and we just built a new parking lot, and we built
Excuse me. Sorry.
we've build a new parking lot and we've made arrangements, laid the groundwork for EV charging. But I'm not a real fan of EVs. We've got some in our city and we've got some charging stations for our vehicles. But I see this as a real big investment with very low return.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you raise a point, and it's not only because of electric vehicles that our funding model will have to change, but vehicles in general have become more and more fuel efficient. So whether you shift to an EV or you continue to buy the late model, I don't know, Chevrolet, it is more efficient than the vehicle that you would have bought, maybe 4 years ago. And so we have, as an industry, we watched how the model that has been developed to support the building of the interstate system in terms of revenue, that model it's outdated. Now, the alternative is to increase the fee that we pay to fuel vehicles, and then have some type of fee for charging electric vehicles. So that's a policy discussion. You mentioned one thing about, I think it was you or maybe it was Winter Park, and I just forgot it. One of the challenges is when you have multiple housing units and you only have a few EVs, charging facilities there, how do you have to address, someone that, pulls up, they charge, and they just leave the vehicle there when you need to charge as well. Now, I call it the daycare rule. For those that have had children in daycare, if you show up 30 minutes late, you get a fee, you get charged. And so I would imagine something like that can be put in place to make sure that the resources are managed judiciously and fairly.
In response to that, what the city of Winter Park is rolling out is after a certain amount of time, I think it's 3 hours. I'd have to look back at the data, but after about 3 hours, the time parked at a charger goes up significantly, just to address the problem of people that want to just park in a charger space.
Mayor,
one thing that's not been discussed is on these charging stations, the fast, we'll call them fast charging stations, is battery denigration. It's been proven that when you charge the battery faster at these supercharger sites or whatever you want to call them, it does denigrate the battery significantly. So, that's an area that are we as cities, if we provide these, are we leaving ourselves open for a lawsuit because we've allowed, we haven't put that information out?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't know the answer to that question. However, I do believe that would be an issue for the automakers to resolve. If the data shows that that's happening as a result of fast charging facilities, that would be a car maker's responsibility, or the charging company or entity that is providing the charging facility to resolve. It's certainly an issue that we can identify in our work. We always have, in our studies, at least some of the ones that I've done, is additional considerations. And these are things such as what you just mentioned. Is that going to be a concern? And I mentioned earlier about first responders. It's different responding to a EV or two EVs that have been in a crash than a gas-powered vehicle.
Mayor Hansen and then Mayor Foraker.
I have on the information, when the hurricane hit South Florida, Teslas and EVs were flooded out, and they would load them up on a tow truck, start taking them down the road, and they would catch on fire. And when these things catch on fire, you can't put them out. They do not, and tow truck companies quit hauling them because they would burn the trucks to the ground. The fire is so hot that it burns the trucks down. So my friend that was impacted said that there were Teslas and EVs parked on the side of the road because no one would pick them up during the hurricane and during the aftermath of the hurricane. So I think there's a lot of information that needs to be put out on these things.
Mayor Foraker?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear about the potential. It doesn't sound like it's totally ferreted out with the potential daycare rule, but I would say that there needs to be some caution into penalizing people for being late, and that'll drive unintended behavior for people to rush to get there and then cause other potentially safety issues. I'd like to think we could, with the technology, we could program that if you're late, you just can't charge, or your charge stops at the time you had. If I understood the objective.
Yeah.
Mr. Hill? Do you have anything on that?
I agree. I agree with that comment. Yeah, that again, that has to be and again, this could be under the policy discussion on when you in your community, when you invite a company to come in and install an EV, or you as a jurisdiction install it yourself, to have that as part of the use agreement with the owner, that you get to a certain time or allocated time, and it just shuts off, and that's that. But that has to be, again, it has to be addressed, because till we start to get the supply to meet or come close to the demand, that curve is always going to be there. So thank you. I mean, these are good comments. Ehong is in the room, and she's taking notes. I'm taking notes. And again, I encourage either you or your staff to participate in these upcoming workshops, because just based on what I've heard at the Technical Advisory Committee and our Community Advisory Committee, and now, there's certainly a lot of interest on this subject, and a lot that we can do in the region to help support it.
I have one last, if we could, I mean, I think it's great if you want to promote it. I'm always kind of dumbfounded or surprised when I hear it's free. They're offering free recharging to people who can afford an EV, which usually only the very wealthy can afford an EV. But my question is there something legislatively, because they don't contribute at all to the roads, that at least with these charging stations, there is some type of, transportation tax added on to the charging?
That's a good suggestion. And it could be something that would go into that legislation, that state legislation. They could include there in terms of the fee that the companies have to pay. That would be separate from going into their pocket, but going into, as you mentioned, to the jurisdictions or into the mobility fee, account to support transportation improvements.
Okay, we'll wrap up here with Commissioner Ramos.
Real quick, Mr. Hill,
Yes.
just a concern what you mentioned about EV accidents with other EV vehicles and the police department or the police having to figure out how to work with those. Is there any resources or instructors that can come educate, or our police department can go and get more information on how to handle that?
I don't know right now, but I would imagine there is, and I can get that for you between myself, our staff, and Kittleson staff and EcoPreserve. We can get that information for you, sir.
I'm sorry, one more, Commissioner Sullivan, then we're moving on.
Thank you, Mayor Dallas. City of Winter Park did a comprehensive study on the charging stations and then used that to develop a method of charging for these public charging stations. Anyone who's interested in receiving that study, please let me know. I'll be glad to forward that information
That'd be great.
to you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to general information. There are several items under general information at tab 4 in your agenda packets. Our upcoming meetings, the next Metro Plan Orlando Board Governing Board meeting is here next week, Wednesday, September 11th, 9 a.m. Our next MAC meeting is November 7th, 9:30. Put that in your calendars. And now, do we have any member comments?
Yes.
Mayor Poraker.
So may not be the absolute best forum here, but it is a transportation issue. And as the topic was brought up about equity and transportation, recently had a discussion with one of our Belle Isle PD staff after a really terrible accident happened Tuesday night, right after I had left City Council, 10:42, a car heading southbound, which I have limited data, but by the look of the video we have on our red light camera, is heading southbound, seemed to be speeding. Car heading northbound, heading left or west. Was turning left, and the car that was heading southbound crashed right into the car, and both I guess both cars had people in it that had to be whisked away and had serious injury. And so it prompted a discussion. I said, man, I see a lot of speeding. And just the other day, I think it was Saturday, a car ended up on the median on Conway and took out a mature crepe myrtle tree and ended up shutting down the entire side of the road, fire, ambulance, multiple ambulance there, horrific looking accident. And so I said to this member of the police department, I said, man, we really need more enforcement. And he said, well, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we've heard this from the larger agencies that share our cross-jurisdictional borders, that the officers are not allowed to do traffic stops anymore. And I was like, what?
They are.
Well, hold on a second. So they're not doing traffic stops because they're being accused of being selective and discriminating against minorities in their traffic stops. And so the officers in those agencies are concerned about losing their jobs if they enforce the law. And so we have not, and so I agreed with his observation and his statement. And so we're in a really odd period of time where we're having large agencies not enforce the law. And I mean, we're seeing this on our borders. I'd be interested to hear if you all are seeing this on your borders. And so it sounds like FHP is the only body that's relegated to doing these stops, but I have a unique geographical issue in that I'm a main artery to the airport, and we're a substitute for Cimarron and the 408 tolls and to 417 or 528. So we see a lot of cut through traffic. So not sure if anybody else has heard anything about this. This is the first I've heard that an agency is admitting to not doing any more transportation or any more traffic stops. And that's just worrisome that our police aren't going to police, if that's true.
If I could make a suggestion on this, there's a book called Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, and it's a traffic engineer who founded this movement called Strong Towns, Chuck Marone. I highly recommend everybody here read it. We cannot enforce our way out of people speeding. We have designed roads that make people want to go fast. And we can't have enough police sitting there waiting for somebody to break the rules. If the road looks like you're supposed to go 100 miles an hour on it, people are going to do it. So everybody read Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, and your eyes will be open and you'll be like, wow, I want to have 10-foot wide roads because even a fire truck can fit down that. And Winter Park, well done on 1792. I have pointed to that multiple times as an example of I believe it's a 9.5-foot road through there, 426. And we were told in Oviedo, oh, there's no possible way we could have your stretch of 426 be narrower than 11.5 feet. And I fought really hard for it. So now we have an 11.5-foot double lanes, plus we have these crazy, it's just stupid. If it's an 11.5-foot lane, you're going fast. So we need to redesign the roads.
Strong cities,
Huh?
strong cities, strong towns.
Yeah, Strong Towns, Chuck Marone, MA, I'll email it so we can pass it around.
There's some I'll let you know that are regarding the whole statistics and things that I learned from our police chief that you might want to be aware of. So that avoids that.
Yeah, we just don't have law enforcement jurisdiction, so it's frustrating, and therefore we don't have the ability to change those roads, only lobby the jurisdiction that controls those roads to make the changes you're talking about. And I understand what you're saying, and in the short term though, I think we need enforcement. I don't think people getting airlifted and from ready for this? Gatlin, Hoffner and Conway. So Conway and Gatlin, Hoffner and Conway, Judge Detweiler, because Judge turns into Detweiler. So Judge Conway. And then as you get closer to McCoy, all have had deaths at those intersections. And then we had a motorcycle death at a median at McCoy and Conway within the last year. So, I mean, this is resulting in deaths, and you can see the signs. I mean, it looks like, a ad hoc cemetery as you drive down, if you start paying attention, because people are putting out vigils and things like that, all across Conway. So, for me, it's concerning. It's not about like, let's get the rule breakers. It's, let's save lives and prevent injury and do something about the problem that's clearly there. But I'm just concerned that we have large agencies that have instituted a policy that I don't think the public is aware of.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
If I get in real quick, Alex, from the city of Winter Springs, thank you for the partnership on funding for the Winding Hollow turn off of 434. That work's been long in coming. Our partnership with our other communities and with MetroPlan, it's appreciated. Thank you very much.
And then any others? Last, I just have a question either for Ms. Beckman or maybe for MetroPlan. Is there a kind of a clearinghouse or a list we can go to for grants that are available to small towns, or let's say safety measures or things like that, if there are a few of them?
We have we have a department in FDOT that does work with grants, and I can go ahead and send her information on to everyone to reach out to. I don't know that there's an actual list, but I do know that as things are passed out, we then forward them on.
Yeah, I find that's the biggest challenge we have, is just knowing where the grants to find them, Alex.
Yeah, many of your local safety action plans that are being prepared should have kind of a funding strategy list. The one that, MetroPlan Orlando received the planning grant for, the Safe Roads and Safe Streets and Roads for All, is the federally kind of most focused discretionary grant for safety emphasis projects. We do have there are other federal funding sources really for larger scale projects. So there probably need to be kind of more of a larger partnership, just given some of the discretionary grant requirements. MetroPlan Orlando also has funds that we use our urban attributable funds that we fund our other prioritized projects with. And just kind of you'll hear more. You didn't hear a 2050 MTP update today. We kind of gave you guys a break from the long range plan. But that's something that we are going to be exploring. So we all have these safety action plans. We have the regional action plans. Each of you has a municipal action plan, and we're going to consolidate all those, look for eligible projects, and then we're going to rethink how how we kind of slice the pie for our federal funds. So there's not just, going after the highly competitive discretionary grants, but also look at the formula-based funds that we receive to start addressing the safety issues that have been identified. So there'll be, we can provide a list. Adrian is in the back taking notes on this. We'll send that to you if it's not included in your Vision Zero action plan. But there are some federal ones, but also those are, like, as I mentioned, really competitive discretionary funds. But we also have formula-based funds that are eligible to fund these types of projects.
That would be great. Law enforcement's very good about kind of providing that, so that'd be helpful for even small projects. All right, do we have any public comments? Any
There are no
online?
hands raised online, Mr. Chairman.
Any in person?
We have not received any.
All right, do we have any submitted written?
None.
All right. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? So move, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. He just, he said, so we want to